after being scratched by radioactive buckthorn, bitten by a radioactive emerald ash borer, and periodically slipping and falling into radioactive recycling bins, mild-mannered Johnny Burnsville was transformed into Sustainability Man. Now faster than compost, taller than a rain barrel, and more powerful than an LED light bulb, Sustainability Man uses his sustain ability to seek out sustainable resources, energy efficiency, and green programs.
I am Sustainability Man. I have come to Burnsville in search of green projects and sustainable resources. Today, I am joined by one of Sustainability Man's favorite and most frequent sidekicks, Burnsville Natural Resources Specialist, Caleb Ashling. Caleb, thank you so much for joining me once again.
Thanks for having me.
Now, as our sustainability boys and girls at home may have already guessed based on the bird feeders that are behind us, this episode is for the birds and the deer and other wildlife, specifically the do's and don'ts when it comes to feeding them. Now, Sustainability Man has learned that many people enjoy watching birds and wildlife in their yards and in their neighborhoods and in their parks, but there are things that they must be aware of before turning their backyard into a wildlife buffet. That leads me to my first question, and I hope it's an easy one. Is it okay to feed the birds?
Absolutely. So feeding birds is a great way for people to connect with nature, especially for kids in suburban areas where they may not have a lot of other opportunities to see wildlife up close.
Now, anyone who's had a bird feeder in their yard knows that it's not always just birds who are trying to get a taste of the feast. Why is it important, and what can people do to try and keep their bird feeders for birds only?
Well, the most important thing that they can do is to keep the bird food off the ground. So most of our unwanted visitors, like deer, turkeys, and ducks and geese, feed on or near the ground. So if we get the bird food off the ground, we're going to prevent a lot of problems. And that's one of the reasons why city ordinance requires that feeders are hung at least 5 feet above the ground.
Aha!
Now, hanging the feeders helps a lot, but it won't solve all the issues. And one issue you may still have is with squirrels. Some people don't mind squirrels, but one thing they do is when they jump on the feeders, they spill seed all over the place, and that ends up on the ground and attracts those unwanted visitors. So there's a couple things you can do to keep the squirrels away.
See ya.
One is if you want to hang your bird feeder from a tree branch, make sure you have a baffle hung over the top. That prevents the squirrels from climbing down to it. Another option is to have a pole system, like this behind us here.
Ooh.
This pole system should have a baffle underneath so the squirrels can't jump or climb up, and it should be placed 10 feet away from any trees so the squirrels can't Superman jump over to it.
I can relate to Superman jumping long distances. So one of those unwanted guests in your yard is deer. Why is it important to try and keep deer specifically away from bird feeders?
Yeah, it is actually against city ordinance for people to feed deer. And one of the reasons is that it draws them out of natural areas and into residential areas. That means they're crossing busy streets more, and there's more risk for potential deer-car collisions.
And that's a problem.
That's bad news for the deer, but it's also bad news for people with car repair bills and potential injuries. Then another reason we want to keep the deers in the parks is because that a lot of times one person may enjoy feeding them, but their neighbors may not enjoy it because those deer end up not just eating the bird food, they eat your hostas and your shrubs and all your other landscaping plants. So the best place for deer is in our natural areas, not in your backyard.
And they can still be seen, just not tearing up your neighbor's plants or getting hit by cars.
That's right.
Now, even with birds, not all birds are created equal, at least when it comes to feeding them. The city of Burnsville does not allow people to feed ducks or geese. Why is that?
It's not a problem with the animals themselves, it's a problem with what they leave behind, which is lots of droppings. So those droppings contain E. coli bacteria and phosphorus.
What?
And when it rains, they all wash into local ponds and lakes and cause water pollution and stinky algae blooms. So when you feed ducks and geese, you end up with a lot of them in one place, and that creates a pretty messy, unwanted situation.
Yikes!
What about turkeys?
Well, the turkey population has been expanding throughout the metro area over the past 10 years.
Wow.
And although they're fun birds to see, they can create some issues in residential areas. And one of those is that when turkeys get fed by people, they can become very comfortable and sometimes even aggressive towards people looking for that free food handout. So the best thing for turkeys and people is to keep them wild, and the way to do that is not to feed them.
Now, birds and deer and squirrel aren't necessarily the only animals that our sustainability boys and girls might cross paths with. Burnsville's been known to have raccoons and fox and coyotes and even a bear.
Wow.
I understand those are probably not the type of guests you want in your backyard. Could you please explain why?
A lot of those predators can play a good role in town. They can reduce mice populations, squirrels and rabbits and other pests.
See ya.
But they also can potentially carry diseases like rabies, and that's a concern for people and for pets. We have had a few instances, although rare, of predators that have attacked small cats or dogs. So it's best if we can try to keep them away from residential areas.
What can people do to try and keep predators away?
Well, the biggest thing you can do is to look at your property and make sure you're not providing any easy food for them to get. So make sure your garbage cans are secured and your compost bins are covered. And then also make sure that you're not leaving any pet food bowls out that have food in them that animals can get at. And then again, keeping your bird feeder area clean can help, because bird seed on the ground attracts rabbits and mice, and that in turn can bring in the predators.
Oh, no.
Then lastly, we always recommend that people keep their cats indoors. That's the safest place for them. And then also keep an eye on your dog when it's out in the yard, especially in the early morning hours and at night.
Caleb Ashling, Burnsville Natural Resources Specialist. Very good information as always. Thank you so much for joining me once again. Now, my sustainability sense is telling me that I must be off. But remember, until next time, you too can use your sustainability.